Treva, can you tell me about your path to Mary Tyler Moore from New York?
Yeah, after I did the show for Carol, it only was on for one year. Um, I was I had just begun therapy, and it was extremely important to me. And so my agent said, do you want me to pitch you for LA? And I said, no, no. This is really something I want to do, is stay in therapy here. And there weren't really shows coming from New York. So then came along, oh, we have this brand new show. It's going to be on the air. It's been picked up, called The Monkees.
So you
And
would leave therapy for the Monkees. That was okay.
no, it's going to be, they said, um, we don't want anybody to have to move out there. They can do it from New York.
Aha.
Perfect. So the Monkees said, we don't want to really hire Hollywood writers because they already have bad habits. We want the New York head. We want the New York
Because the
mind.
Monkees was a highly intellectual show.
Well, the Monkees was, um, I guess they didn't want somebody who had written for 25 years for Father Knows Best. Yeah, I mean, they wanted to think, that disgusting phrase, edgy, edgy. Um, so they said, don't send any resumes, just send stuff. So my agent, who was Gary Nardino, who had utmost faith in me and was wonderful, just wonderful, and he said, they're going to hire you. And I said, but you haven't sent the material. He said, they'll hire you. I know it. I know it. And so he said, I'm going to package you like a gem. You're going to be the only one that I'm submitting from this agency. So thank you, Gary. And so I went to see the pilot, and it was me, and this was in the 60s, so it was me and 2,000 bearded Afro other writers, and so four of us were chosen from New York, and six of us were chosen from New York, something like that, and two from LA. And so the first thing that they did was they said, we're hiring you for 6 weeks. Well,
Like
I had just been given this great big going away party for 6 weeks. So we're going to hire you for 6 weeks. So we get there, and they say, not all of you are going to make it. You have 6 weeks to write your first script, and we're going to winnow down, which put total confidence and relaxation in all. Everybody was panicked. And so the first thing they did was they took the first week and they showed us Marx Brothers, and they showed us every kind of insane comedy stuff, which was great. And then we worked out the outlines with Jerry Gardner and Dee Caruso. And the very first story conference that we had, they had decided already that Mike Nesmith was going to be the feet on the ground one, Davey was going to be the heartthrob, Mickey was going to be insanity, and what was Peter going to be? And they didn't know. They said either he's going to be a genius or really out of it. And so the vote was split, and it was decided he's going to be like really out of it, which is ironic because Peter's very smart, very, very smart. And the whole thing was very scary. They gave us, because they had said, we don't want people with backgrounds because we don't want them to have picked up bad habits. They gave us very sweetly just the very beginning things that every writer knows. Begin the scene with interior, blah, blah, like that. And I still have that. I saved that. And then we went down to the set and we saw the Monkey Mobile and we saw their pad, which was always in quotation marks, the Monkees' pad. And then we met the guys who were so much fun and so great and so smart. And then the first time that we wrote the scripts during that 6-week period, we were supposed to put in what was called their romp. Their romp was when they were going to interpolate music. So here we are, we're comedy writers, our whole world is comedy, and we're saying to ourselves, so they'll put in some songs, who cares about the songs? It's going to be the script, little knowing. And we kept getting all these things from Bert and Bob saying, these guys are going to take off, it's going to be a sensation. We're going, okay, sure, I hope so, but hey. So then we're supposed to write the romp. But what it turned out with the music background, what turned out was that Jim Frawley, who did a lot of the Monkees, he wanted the guys to improvise the romp rather than take what writers in a room wrote. He wanted.
What was the romp for people who haven't seen the show?
Oh, the romp was, it was directly stolen from Help and Hard Day's Night. The romp was, they would do little fast cuts of sort of semi-blackouts, or just silliness. They would take a bed and wheel through it if it was a hospital show. My first one was a haunted house, so they would have skeletons and they would act all. It was tiny little cuts, and there would be the song. They would have the song, which would then go to be on the charts, and they were the sensation and all that.
So it was almost an early music video, it sounds like.
Yes. Yeah, an early music video. It was. Now that I think of it, yeah. It was also, then you could actually say that the little thingies in like Help were like that. Where Richard Lester, for the first time, would do things that weren't connected. They would be singing one thing and they would be doing another. And yeah, so after the 6 weeks, we were all accepted, and okay, that was good. And it was a lot of fun. I was maybe at that point the only person who wasn't smoking grass. No, there were other people who weren't smoking grass on staff. We were much maligned. We were very. They would deign to talk to us. we were the unhip ones. And
what was your greatest story or moment when working on the Monkees?
Working on the Monkees, let's see, the I don't have one. I don't have a greatest moment. But then again, I don't have a worst moment. Oh no, I know what my greatest moment was. My greatest moment was I had written, I at that point I was a very slow writer as opposed to now where I'm a very slow writer. And so I was the last one to come in, and we had the 6-week deadline. So Jerry Gardner called and he said, you know that it's due. So, oh, yes, I know. And he said, they're getting nervous. Do you have your first act finished? And I said, yeah. He said, could you just send the first act? And it was so against my principles, but yeah, of course. So I sent the first act. And I'm working on the second, and phone rings, Jerry. He said, it's terrific. So, oh, so I'm not insane. you never know if you're insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And was there something that you had to do to write the Monkees? You were talking about with Mary Tyler Moore, you had to get each character's attitude.
Yeah.
What was there about the Monkees that you had to do to make it work?
I guess adopt the nothing really matters, except our music. It was really getting the nothing really matters attitude of not taking anything too seriously, except their friendship. You know, take that seriously, and of course their music. But yeah, I would say at that time I came from New York, where people would be saying, "Boy, I'm," and here in LA they were saying, "Man." So I would go through, change all the boys to man. Wow, I'm au courant and edgy. Also, this was pre-computer, and so you'd be typing, and then of course when you go over it, it would be this terrible thing where you'd find mistakes and it could be better, and you have to retype and retype. But yeah, I loved that. I loved working on the Monkees. It was fun.
If there's something else you want to say about the Monkees, say it, or let's move on to the next thing.
Well, it's where I met my one of my writing partners, Peter Meyerson. He was on it, and then we went on to do a bunch of things together. We did Get Smart. We did That Girl. We did a show called He and She, which was a lovely show, and a lot of little shows.
What was Get Smart like?
Get Smart was...
I still have that shoe phone, by the way.
You do? That's so cute. Listen, some of those things, eBay, whoop. Get Smart was a lot of fun because we had seen it a lot. We weren't just going on shows that we were inventing from a pilot. Peter and I, we really worked well together. We loved writing that show, and that's where Jay Sandrich. Jay was the director of that, and of course Buck Henry, and that gave us. Then Buck Henry did a show called Captain Nice, and he called us in, and because he by a lot of associations, he knew our work, and he called us in, and we came up with an idea, went home and wrote it, and we thought it was the funniest thing that had ever. Oh my God! So we handed in, and you hand it in, and even before you get the car from the gate of the thing, you think you're going to get a phone call, but oh, did anybody call? So waiting. We waited, didn't hear anything, and yes, we must have been insane by thinking it was so. 11 days later, got a call. It was Buck. He said, "I just found the script. Nobody told me that it was there. It's on my desk, buried. We're going to shoot it." I said, "Well, when do you give us the notes for the second draft?" The best words in the world. "We don't need a second draft." So we don't need a second draft is like, angels.
That's the dream.
That's the dream. And then he made us story editors. So we were story editors for the whole year.
And what was the difference in your process working with a partner?
Very, very, very much easier to do the outline. God, that's my bête noire. That's where I always get stuck, doing outlines. But with Peter, it was very easy. What we would do is we would split it up. We would get the way into each scene, and he would take one scene, I would take the next one, and then we would exchange, and we would do it that way. I find that's really the best. And then when we would go into each scene with knowing really pretty much what it was about. My work method, if it can be called a method, when I'm alone, it's I have trouble writing but I have trouble writing, like if my computer is if I have to sit at a desk and I don't feel a part of it. So I write in bed, and I write with, I have a table thing with my laptop on it, and it's like right in front of me. And
Are you in pajamas or clothes?
Nightgown. You've been around. Yeah, nightgown, and everything has to be neat around me. If the wastebasket is filled up, if anybody would come to visit my house, they should see it when I'm writing, because it's never neater. Somehow the outside gets reflected. The outside has to be like just really neat surfaces, and maybe the other rooms aren't as neat, but around me there can't be like too many papers or anything. And it helps if there's a cat. I feel the nice cat vibe. It used to be that I would work first thing in the morning. Now I seem to like to write later on in the day, and late at night, and early morning. I mean, sometimes I'll write till 4 or 5 in the morning, because it's quiet, and it's just you. It's just you. And
so when you had to meet these deadlines, when you were working on shows,
yeah,
did you have a certain method, number of hours, or just?
When I was working on the Monkees, I would find that I couldn't get any work done. We all worked at the office. I found I couldn't really
Did you have to bring your bed into the office? No?
If only. If only. I would only work after everybody left around 6:30. And then I would feel it was me, just me again. And I remember some lovely times I would finish, let's say I would finish at 12 or something. And it was very nice and romantic and dramatic. I would walk across, it was Screen Gems Columbia, and I would walk across the Columbia lot, and it would be late at night, and there would be the guards, so you weren't, and it was just awfully what you dream of when you dream of being a writer, of the lonely writer of the Monkees, the lonely writer of Moby Dick. No, it wasn't Moby Dick. Oh, was it perhaps a Faulkner? No, I was writing Hey, we're the Monkees. But it was very lovely. And then I would always come in late, but everybody knew that I was writing it. And I pretty much met deadlines. I pretty much met deadlines until I started writing screenplays, and then it was harder to meet deadlines.
Let me make sure we've gotten all the history from New York to Mary Tyler Moore.
Okay.
What else? What were the other steps in between?
New York to Mary Tyler.
We got the Monkees, and then the Buck Henry show.
Before Monkees I was friendly with Joan Rivers, and Joan had an assignment for an assignment for 2 NBC pilots. So we wrote 2 pilots together, and that was great fun. Nothing got on, but it was sort of working my way around learning.
Was she collaborative? Was she good to collaborate with?
Oh, God, yes. there are many Joan Rivers. One Joan Rivers is a first-rate collaborator and mind. The other Joan Rivers is, she tells her, put downs and this, a totally different person. Oh, she's wonderful to collaborate with. Wonderful. So, all right, so then that was writing pilots. Then the Monkees.
Would you mind telling me what the pilots that you wrote with Joan Rivers were about that didn't go, but do you remember?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I know that, we also did some comedy records, which are still in my garage on tapes. And it was all about being single. Yeah, we every now and then we talk about these have some very interesting and good actors on it. But anyhow, yeah, we did comedy tapes.
So then you did the Monkees,
then the Monkees, then Get Smart and those things. Oh yes, this will give an idea of how long ago this was. To the youngsters, you will see. We were asked to write. Peter and I were asked to write a pilot of Perils of Pauline, and they said we're giving it to another writer, and it was a Sid Caesar writer. He has this assignment too, and so do you, and we're going to pick, one of them. And so the guy, he was the head of development, and he read ours, and he said, because I wrote it in my journal, this is the funniest pilot that I've ever read, but I can't put it on because the two of you are too young to run a show.
wow.
Too young. We were in our 20s. And so we have tried to recycle that funniest. We've tried to recycle it because it's just an idea. It doesn't belong to anybody. But yeah, we did pilots and things. And then Jim asked me to write a Room 222. I wrote several of those. And Allan, Jim left. He was story editor of Room 222. Then Allan took over. So I got an opportunity to work professionally, not just be friends with, but to work professionally with both of them. And that's when, right after 222, was Jim's call. What are you doing the rest of your life? We want you on the show.
So we've talked a lot about your work habits. Is there anything else you want to say about that? Because otherwise I'll go on to what you did after Mary Tyler Moore.
Oh, okay. I've said quite enough.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Painful subject.
No. Well, it can be painful, but it can be huge rewards. I mean, it is the hugest when you think that you can't do it, a particular scene, and you can't, and it's just trite, and it's been done before, and it's not funny, and then all of a sudden you see a way to do it, and you do it, and it's like it's as good as, well, I was going to say it's as good as sex. Nothing's as good as sex. It's as good as bad sex. It's just this great.
I'm seeing a whole other line of questioning here, but I don't know if we can go there.
That's for another
part two.
Yeah, that's for another tape.
So then, were you burnt out? You went to Europe for 2 years? What happened?
I was afraid I was going to get burnt out. Everybody says, "Oh, I don't understand. You won the Emmy, and then you went to Europe." I didn't know I was going to win the Emmy, but it turned out that I had decided that every time I went to Europe, I came back more of an enriched person because I was seeing, you know what happens when you travel, you're wide open, all your senses, and I saw different ways of life and people I would never have come in contact with. And I said, it's not enough for me to just go once a year for 2 or 3 weeks. I want to live there. And also I felt something that I hadn't mentioned previously. I was a musical child prodigy.
Oh,
when I was
everyone forgets to mention that.
Yeah, since I was 4. So,
what were you a prodigy in? Everything?
Music. Well, I have the 3 older sisters, and they were taking piano lessons, and so my mother was upstairs, and somebody was practicing, and so she poked her head in. She was wondering who's practicing, and it was me, having no lessons, having picked up from my sisters practicing. I was able to play the stuff, and it's like, oh, wow, okay. So Juilliard said I was a musical genius. I say it as if I don't give a shit, you know. No, Juilliard said I was a musical genius, and my sister Corinne said, don't tell them at kindergarten because they'll be very jealous and they'll be mad at you. So I couldn't tell them.
Thank God you've been able to tell us, and so the world
Yes,
will now know.
I've kept it hidden in my prodigy heart. So I had felt, with all my piano teachers and everything, and I was feeling during the Mary Tyler Moore Show, I was feeling, I love the work I'm doing, I'm having a great time, but I'm afraid, because I've been, all these expectations and all these, can you do it, and can you be better than that, and the only woman who, and all that. And so I decided that I wanted to experience something outside of, is my agent doing good for me, and am I going to be nominated for...
Have I been packaged as a gem this week?
Yes. Nobody said that after that. I wanted to just say to all my agents, I come from an agent who packaged me like a gem, William Morris Endeavor, so you can't send anybody else out from your agency. So I felt I really wanted to take a break, and I was going to live for a year in Paris, but as it turned out, I decided to stay longer and longer and longer, and ended up...
Were you writing?
Yes, I was secretly doing something. I was secretly writing a screenplay on my own, so that there weren't any... Nobody knew I was writing it. There weren't any expectations. It was just... I would go to movies in every country that I was living in, and then I remember seeing Interiors, and
that's the Woody Allen
serious film, which I loved, and analyzing it and breaking it down, and yeah, nobody knew that I was writing it, so that if I was failing, and so then I lived in the north of France. I met a guy and lived in the north of France, and then moved to Copenhagen, which I loved. It's funny, when I was living in Paris, I had a lot of names to look up of friends back here who said, oh, look up this one, that one. And I never really felt at home in Paris. It was exciting, but I never felt at home. When I moved to Copenhagen, I felt instantly at home. And I joined an improv group, and then studied improv for a year, and then starred in a play, of all things, in English. And then finally, after 2.5 years, it's time to come back.
So you were replenished creatively?
Yes. Yes. I felt I was taking in. I was taking in. I wasn't just, is it good enough? Is it good enough? Is it good enough? Thing. No, it's not good enough. It just, yeah, I felt, if that's the, yeah, replenished, or that there was, one thing that I did was I didn't tell anybody I was a writer until I knew them very well. Because when you say you're a writer, you're then totally put in a category. Oh, she must be verbal. Oh, she must be smart. And I felt I had enough of that in Hollywood, of expectation of this. So I said, which wasn't a lie, because I don't lie about that, but I said, well, I worked in an office, which is true. I didn't happen to say, what I was doing in the office.
No, that's fascinating, because you purposely did not identify yourself as someone of high status.
That's right. Well, not compared to a director. But yeah, I didn't identify myself as a certain kind of intellect, a certain kind. It's just, what do you think? And that's, how do you do? I think you're a writer. No, it was, I wanted to be just anonymous and tabula rasa, and whatever you think of me, it's from your point of view, not from what I'm telling you.
Were you worrying about whether you would work again in television, or did you not care about that?
There is a joke that ends with a bird, the schmuck bird, and he's going, schmuck, schmuck. I have that to say. I felt that I had won an Emmy, and I had won a Writers Guild Award, and when I left, I had been asked to write something like 16 pilots. So I felt, hell, 2.5 years. Well, I wasn't in the kind of demand that I had been when I left. But I was still in demand, but life had moved on. Oh, one thing that had happened, which was fantastic, was in the 2.5 years that I was gone, women started getting much, much more hired, so that when I would be meeting people for work, there were a lot of women involved and a lot of women working, which was so wonderful. What happened shortly after that, I wrote some pilots. I finished the screenplay for Michael Eisner. Michael called me in, we want a screenplay. So I finished the screenplay that I had been working on in Denmark, and it was a screenplay, famous words, it came very close to getting on. Oh, I've never heard that phrase before. Huh. I was friendly with Ed Kleban. Ed was the brilliant lyricist who wrote Chorus Line. And he had read the Michael Eisner screenplay, Denmark Michael Eisner screenplay, and showed it to Michael Bennett. And Michael said, I really want to meet her. Is she interested in musicals? And Ed said, that's the thing she loves more than anything on earth, which is the truth. And so Michael called me in to New York, and he said, let's just see if we get along, and we did, and he said, I would like you to move to New York. I want to write my next musical with you. And that was among the happiest moments of my life.
So the screenplay that you wrote, no one knew, without, so there wouldn't be any expectation.
Yes, right.
This is the one that immediately Michael Bennett wanted to make into a musical. That's cool.
everything that you said, but the last part isn't that he wanted to make it into a musical. He wanted the writer of that, me,
You.
to start from scratch and do a musical, not the screenplay.
Oh, I see. A
Yeah.
different subject.
Yeah,
Okay.
he was very interested in writing about a woman, and the screenplay that I had written was about, he said, thank God somebody who knows how to write women. So we started in, so I moved to New York. I rented my house, and we started in to write, and we're not coming up with an idea. And Michael came in and he said, I had dinner with Nancy Walker and David Craig last night. Now, Nancy had been one of the directors on Mary Tyler Moore. And Michael said, I've never really asked you about this, but Nancy said, well, here she was doing beautifully, her career was going great, and she picked up and went to Europe. And what's the story with that? So then I started talking to him about it, and we decided that a lot of the adventures that I'd had in Europe would be just wonderful to make into a musical. And so we started working. And I always think when my life is through and the angels ask me to recall the thrill of it all. The thrill of it all was working with Michael. It was the happiest relationship I've ever had artistically. He was the smartest. I can't even say a near genius. He was a total genius. He was the smartest on every level that I had ever been around. When you're with people who are your smartness, but better, you get better. Not to compete. It's just like it rises. You rise to the occasion, and it was bliss. It was just total bliss. And what I wrote for Michael is beyond any doubt the best thing I've ever written. There was a lot about sex in it. It's a coming of age story about a woman, sexually repressed woman. And out of the blue, we were going to open on Broadway. We had the opening date. We had the T-shirts. We had the logo. And Michael suddenly disappeared. And nobody knew where he went. He went and hid out in the Caribbean, and he stopped everything. He stopped, it was called Scandal. He stopped Scandal. He stopped everything, even his agent. Nobody knew where he was. Well, what had happened was Michael had just found out that he was HIV positive. And this was in the 80s when it was a death sentence. It wasn't like now. And he was unable to do anything. And he stopped Scandal. He called me before he died. And he said that he couldn't do Scandal, which was all about sex, when he was dying of AIDS. And then he died 16 days later. And I now have rewritten it and updated it, and it's still the best thing I've ever written, and I'm now trying to get it on as a play.
That must have been heartbreaking on so many levels.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I should mention something. Part 2 of it was the most wonderful experience. Michael started doing coke, and then it turned into one of the worst experiences. Everybody would say, if you're going to come in today, don't come in past 1 o'clock, because that's when he turns. Because he would start early in the day, so I would make sure to get in there early. And then when he dropped Scandal and dropped everything and refused to work on anything, that was the worst experience of my life. outside of family members dying or ill or an animal that you love dying. But in sort of the real world, it was the worst and remains the worst experience of my life. So that was a big, big thing. I learned more about writing from Michael than I had ever learned about anything. It's about writing, about character, about everything, and about the thing that you're most afraid of writing. That's the thing you have to write. And those were pretty much his words. He probably said it better. But that's where some of my best writing came in, the stuff I was most afraid to write.
Was that the main thing you learned? Is there anything else you can share with us as passing on his wisdom?
He was talking about theater, and he said in the first 5 minutes you have to know what tone the audience has to know what the tone is. It has to be early on, so that they know what to expect. There's a very famous example in a funny thing happened to me on the way to the Forum, where Sondheim's first music was a very lovely ballad called Love I Hear. And it's a very sweet ballad. And the audience did not find a lot of the show funny until Jerome Robbins said, but we're not preparing them. So that's why he wrote the song Comedy Tonight, which is hilarious, and the orchestration goes like you're at a circus, and the Robbins thing is like jugglers and everything like insane, and the audience totally stopped just staring and loved it. Michael brought me in on Dreamgirls. He was doing Dreamgirls at that time, and flew me to Boston, and I helped out. Let me see what. It's hard to say, imparting some of his. He very, very much trusted his unconscious. That's something that I learned with him and with improv. In improv, you learn your unconscious is smarter than you are. Trust it. It'll lead you. And so sometimes when I'm in the middle of writing and you get in that zone thing, and the zone is your unconscious has taken over and said, step aside, I'm here. And it goes, and that's interesting. Oh, I like that. Oh, thank you, unconscious. And that's what I learned with Michael and with improv. I think improv is so good for writers.
Did Michael have any techniques that helped him get into his unconscious mode, or do you?
Michael's technique was being alive, being Michael. He just did it. Do I have, getting stoned. I don't like to write stoned, but I find that, this is just hypothetical, naturally.
We're talking about medical marijuana here.
Yes, we're talking about medical marijuana. I think editing, I think it's very good to edit stoned, because it makes you capture sort of little things. And I think Michael and I were stoned like for about half of our meetings, something like that. But he was stoned even when he wasn't stoned. I mean, he had access to...
So when you say seriously, since we're trying to be honest here, getting stoned but not for the writing. So the getting stoned just to kind of come up with ideas, or?
For editing and coming up with ideas. But not for writing, because the next day you look at it and you say, oh my God, That's not funny, it's stupid. But ideas, yeah, because it helps you capture something that might be out of reach if you're not stoned.
What has been the highlight of what you've done, kind of on a soul level?
Um, I well, there's two parts for me. There's two parts of this whole process of writing television, writing movies, writing theater, anything. One is when you're writing, what you go through, because if you have a partner or if you're alone, the two of you or the one person, you have this trip that you take, and that's the writing process. Then part two is, now what do I do with this? Do I have an agent? Yes. Will he bring you to the right places? What will happen? What will happen with the selling of it? Do I have to pitch this? Pitching to me is like if Rembrandt says, comparing herself to Rembrandt.
As everyone does.
Yeah. Yes, it's a writer's. Please get a writer in here to think of the right word. Albatross, to be comparing themselves to Rembrandt. Rembrandt says, I want to paint a woman's hands so that it will be in the Rijksmuseum in 100 years. And so he has to go and he has to say, well, I have this great idea. It's going to be painting hands. Yeah, we've seen hands. One thing has nothing to do with the other. And I had to really learn how to pitch, because my natural instinct is to say, well, I think it's going to be good, so let me do it, thank you. And their natural impulse is to say, are you fucking kidding? You know, what's it going to be? We're going to be spending our money, da 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 da. So I had to sort of learn how to be a different person. The Three Faces of Eve, I had to learn how to translate before I've written something, which is so obnoxious. How to translate to whoever I'm pitching it to what my ideas were before I wrote them. And let's say my ideas were really terrific. As long as I'm doing a hypothetical, I'm going to do it that way. Okay, let's say the ideas were really terrific, but I pitched them very low key. Well, then she goes and there's a hysterically funny sequence when she's on the merry-go. They're not going to buy it. So I have to say, so she gets on the merry. I mean, I have to be an actress. I have to be an actress when I'm pitching something I haven't written yet. Then comes this thing when you're actually writing and you say, Jesus, I pitched this act break and I'm seeing now that I don't want it to be. I mean, it gets very horrendous. Although, well, yeah, it gets horrendous, and then you have to send them a rewritten outline saying I've decided to, and they'll say okay, but it's just a drag. Okay, now I want to get back to the meat and potatoes, or for vegetarian, the actual writing of a script it's kind of a conversation with your psyche, because this is what happens with me. I'll pitch something or I'll decide to write something. I'll say, oh yeah, it's going to be great. And then I sit down and I say, I can't do this. It's impossible. I'm not good enough. It's too ambitious. Anything I can fail at any point. And I remember when I was living in New York, and a long time ago, when Georgette Kaufman was with Moss Hart and several other collaborators, and there was a thing in the paper, and I used to carry it around in my little faux leather wallet, and it said, whenever he finishes something, he always says, I'll never be able to do that again. And so I remember, like, when I was in the middle of like doing good things and people are saying, hey, that's good, I would say, God, I'm nervous about this next one. And people would assume, well, but you've had success with your previous one. Has nothing to do with anything. You start all over again. You start from the beginning of, yeah, it'll be great. No, I'll never, ever do it. And this line is amateur and hack and cliche and wide. And so to me, it's a conversation with your psyche of, hello, hello, psyche, yes, of the pass, fail, the I can't, but I must, and maybe, to me, most importantly, you have to be honest. You have to be honest with yourself. I'll give an example. Sometimes you meet, I'm going to be drawing a lot of examples from dating and love and things. You meet somebody and you say, I don't like this about him, and he seems selfish. And then it sort of magically goes away because you want to like this person. And then 2 months later, when you're in the relationship, he's selfish, and it's stuff that okay. So when I'm writing something, I'll say, this line is good, in that tone of voice. This line is good, not, this line is good. So when I get to, this line is good, later on I say, you were fooling yourself. You were being dishonest. You were trying to pretend that it's good enough, and now you're paying the price because now you're going over the whole script, and it's a horrible line. It's boring. Everybody has said it. Sometimes I'll be watching a movie or something, or television, and there'll be a line. I'll think, does the writer think nobody ever thought of that before? It's just that it's so cliche, and I'll look for cliches. I'll look for cliches. I'll look for obvious exposition lines that previously I had said, it's okay. It's kind of almost a course in being in therapy with yourself, because you say, there's another thing to watch for. You say, nobody will really notice this. I mean, maybe a few writers will notice this, but no. And then you say, okay, I have an example of something. I used to be a songwriter, and I read a lot of books about lyricists. And somebody wrote a book about, Hammerstein, Oscar Hammerstein II wrote a foreword to his book of lyrics, in which he was talking about the man who made the Statue of Liberty, who sculpted the Statue of Liberty. And he said the guy did it before there were planes, before there were flight, before they even dreamt of anything like that. And yet he made the head perfect because he had to make it perfect. And never dreaming that anybody would even see it. And so when I find myself saying, nobody's going to notice it, maybe, maybe, then I say, well, the man who made the Statue of Liberty, and I say, well, this will sound very something, but I'll say, I'll notice it. I'll say, I'll notice it, and I'll feel guilty about it, that I could have done better. I think of anything that I've written that turned out, in my estimation, that turned out well, and there was always it was always, I'll never do this, and then each scene would become Sisyphusian. Sisyphusian task of, I have to do this, and I have to do it well. Whether or not it turned out well, that's a whole different other story. But my intention was always keep going until you can't make it better.
You've been mentored inadvertently and vertently. You've talked about it. Who have you mentored?
I love mentoring. I love mentoring writers who are not at their very, very first step, but when they've learned a little bit. What I like to do with mentoring is not so much go line by line, not say, oh, this has to be better, or not going line by line, but using, let's say, the line that you say this could be better, to use that as an exercise to do sort of a rule of writing. This has to be better. See, what you did was, it's too long, so that by the time they hear this, they get what the joke is, and by the time this is over, they've already gotten the joke. They sort of now, it's to give them the rules of, that's why it isn't funny. There's too many syllables, or you actually need another syllable. They have to digest this first. Then you need another couple of syllables, and then do the next thought. I love that kind of mentoring, because even if the person doesn't understand it at that minute, they will eventually understand it. And usually they understand it that minute. And people sort of don't teach so much that way.
Absolutely. Who are the lucky people who get mentored by you?
The lucky people, I'm not going to do names or anything, but there is one warning that I want to say. I once mentored someone who was really showed exceptional talent, and I mentored him, for which he was enormously, he gulped it all down and got it. And I learned something about mentoring, and it can be, not all the time at all, but it can be that if somebody has issues with their own security and stuff, that they want to, it's like a son wanting to be better than the father and kind of smash the father down so he can, it's a little Oedipal or whatever. This man that I mentored, what happened was he got to be very uglily competitive, and all he wanted towards the end was to be the best in the room and stuff. And he wasn't the best in the room, but he had this competitive thing, and it ended extremely badly. It's one of the few really things that shows up in my dreams when I dream that we reconcile and that he says I was wrong.
Oh my God, that's so sad.
So it was major thing. We had signed an agreement, a financial agreement, that he eventually ripped up, paid no attention to. It got very bad.
Whoever's watching this, you don't want to do that to people who are mentoring you.
You don't want to have it done to you, and you don't want to do it. It's like an older, the most common example is an older man taking a young woman, and then they get to the point where they want to show him that they don't need him anymore. And so it might be a very bad breakup or something. But this was pretty awful. And
has that ever happened with a woman? Do you think that's a male female dynamic, or?
Yeah, sure. It could be that kind of thing. An older woman.
But that hasn't stopped you from mentoring, has it?
No.
Good.
No. He never got to be as good as he could have been.
And
He,
you know who you are.
and you know who you are. You know who you are. He got a lot of successful things, many successful things, but his writing never got as good as it could have been. I think once he started getting successful, it was like Zanuck. There's a famous Zanuck thing that he said to all his assistants. He said, "Don't say yes till I finish talking." So I think I think he surrounded himself with people who, well, it was him. So yeah, that was that. And I do have dreams of his calling, so that can happen. But for the most part, it's very satisfying to mentor, and particularly if you see results in their next draft, it can be great.
Now, let me ask you a question that we ask everyone.
Yes.
What advice do you have for young writers, either in terms of, how to survive the whole process or creative advice?
Learn how to give blowjob. No. Terrible. How can you?
That's a step in your process of success that you left out of the
I
interview.
left out, because it's just so automatic.
Somewhere between the piano prodigy and the blowjob. I don't know what happened. But...
Yeah, you need a mentor for that too. One huge thing is make sure to have friends that you can really trust. This is a very strange, heady atmosphere we live in here, and make sure that there's someone you can tell your secrets to and who is truly a friend, and that's very, very important. Also, in picking an agent, this is tough. I don't even know if it's possible, but try to pick someone whose ethics match yours.
So if you're a sleazeball,
get an even slimier sleazeball.
And if you're not,
you know what? There's easy pickings. No, if you, I loved most of my agents. There was one agent that I had who was just disgusting, and he broke promise. He had promised one studio. I was being pitched for an overall deal, and he promised one studio that he would get back to them if somebody bettered their offer. And he did not get back to them because he thought it was better for me to be with the other place. Didn't get back to them. And I mean, it was like I suffered over that. I think that I'm saying something that's not really possible because you can't really know their ethics. It's mostly, no, I'm taking this lunch.
Well, no. You can. There are very different styles of agenting.
Yeah, but you don't know until you're with them. What do you think?
I think you can. People have reputations.
Yeah.
But young writers may not get their pick of agents. Is there any other advice that you would give young writers?
Always remember why you began a particular project, where your passion lay then. Because 100% of the time, probably, you'll still have that passion. If you're on the 90th draft and you say, oh, God, say, wait a minute, what was the reason? Oh, I wanted to show the role, whatever. And that can heighten. Also, for a young writer, I mean, that can help you sustain your passion. Also, for a young writer, to when you're staring at the computer and it's staring back, to look at a past draft that you've written of something and say, look where I started out, and look at your very rough draft, and you say that was crap, and look what it became, and it became something that you liked. And just remember, it started out like where you are right now, staring. Advice for young writers. That most of the time you're right, and they are wrong. And if you get notes, you should say to yourself, will it harm what I really want to say if I take this note? And if you think it will, there's a correct answer, which is, that's interesting. Let me think about that. And then you rip it up.
Do you usually say, I tried it and I couldn't make it work?
Yes, I tried it, and you wouldn't have liked it. It was not good. The idea was okay, but I just couldn't make it work. If they have the note and you say, and you say, this is damn good, then of course you do it. If they have a note and it's a sort of lateral change, in that it's not better, it's not worse, it's the same but just different, you do it. You won't suffer anything. I think. Here's one that it took me a long time to learn. If somebody says, at the beginning of the screenplay, if somebody says, okay, at the end of Act 1, why don't you have her do something like, I don't know, run away or take a plane? Well, and then you say to yourself, run away, take a plane, that's stupid. But if you look underneath, you have to find, why did they say that? You have to find their motivation. Now, they're not writers. They're just note givers. All they know is they had a feeling there that something's getting boring, or they want to change, and they're not writers, so they can't tell you the change. But you can say, so they're saying, I have to do something here. Okay, I'll have her, take poison, whatever. Don't discard their note just because the literal doing of it wouldn't make sense to you. Look beneath and see when. Now, beginning writer is saying, yeah, but I'm not even with the network. I don't get a meeting with the network. And I don't think anybody really has an answer for the very, very beginning. Of course, everybody knows. I mean, now with the internet, everybody knows every contest. Everybody knows the Warner's thing, or the, all the competitions, and the Disney. And one thing that other people have told me about is, I love taking classes. I did a bunch of classes with Linda Sager, who's great, and Dara Marks, who's just wonderful.
And Linda's the author of several books.
Yes. She's written a lot of books.
What are the names of her books again? How to make a great character greater?
Make a good script great. And you can see psychologically how smart she was, because the assumption that it's good already. Linda's wonderful. A book on character, book on adaptation.
And Dara Marks you also recommend?
Dara Marks is wonderful, just wonderful. She has a book out about I think it's called Transformation. I forget the name, but Dara Marks is so good, and I pass every one of my scripts through her, and she's very.
That's a high tribute.
Yeah, she is wonderful. She's very supportive, but very firm.
So never stop learning. Never stop being a beginner, would you say? Or
I love that. just came to me. It just came to me psychically. Never stop being a beginner.
Yes, I'm a Zen Buddhist priest on the side. So, wow, those are fantastic things to say. Anything else? We don't have to package you as a gem. You just are a gem.
Oh, will you be my sister?
Yes.
I have 3.
Can I borrow some money? What are you writing now?
I yesterday finished a script with my now writing partner Eric Charloff. We just finished it's sort of sexy romance. Sexy romance.
Congratulations on finishing. That's
yeah.
Typing the end, isn't that?
Yeah. It took so long. We've sent it out to, here's another thing. After we finished the first draft, we sent it out to trusted friends and listened to everybody. And what I learned was if 3 people say the same thing, you gotta really pay attention to it. If one person says one thing, you say, well, no, I don't think she got it. And another, I don't. But to really, really, and friends that you beg them tell me the truth. So we did that twice. Now this is the third go round, and I think we have it this time.
Congratulations.
We damn well better. Yeah.
So you're in a good mood today.
Yes. Yeah.
Anything else have we gotten? Well, you're a role model and a wonderful person, and I'm honored to be sitting across from you.
Oh, thank you, and so you are too.
Thank you, Treva. That's fantastic.